Hey there, and welcome to the Confident Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Brooks. Join me as I sit down and chat with co-hosts, friends, and carefully curated guests and talk about all the things that empower you to become your best and most confident self. So, let's get started. Hey, welcome back. So, on today's episode, I thought it'd be an interesting conversational topic here that I think many of us can really relate to as we navigate life and just find ourselves in different seasons, different transitions, different phases of our life, because at the end of the day, we're constantly growing, we're evolving, we're changing, things are happening. And ideally, what I think goes amiss is that that's all actually part of life. It's about finding our way in ways that make us feel that we are confidently on the right path, that we are confidently stepping forward into this version of who we're becoming, and that we're confident in knowing that in all walks and all seasons, we find our footing and our place. So this was actually a conversation that I had kind of brought up amongst a few of my lady friends here, and it got me thinking, how many of us feel like we're not hitting those targeted milestones? And what I mean by that is, in this conversation, a bunch of us were just sharing openly and candidly about some of the struggles that we felt as we were navigating in these different seasons. So obviously, we're all coming from different professional backgrounds, whether we are just coming out of college or just getting started on our career, to maybe we're entering that dating phase, to getting married, to having our first child, to starting that business or that passion or whatever this looks like in your season. And amongst the women that I was around, the conversation came up, and this woman in particular had said, I just feel like I'm not living up to what I'm supposed to be doing. And I said, can you tell me a little bit more? And she shared with me that as she's going through her life changes, she's realizing that so many of her colleagues and her friends, even from school days to college days to the colleagues that she has currently in the position and the job that she's at right now. And when she was sharing with me, it was like, part of it was she was holding on to those childhood friends and then the friends that she had collected throughout these years into college and then these colleagues. And where she was measuring herself up was comparing it to the quote unquote said expectations of what a woman should be doing. And I pause on that should because I think many of us can relate. I think as we go through life, we're constantly being shoulded on. And what that means is like somebody else indirectly has been navigating your life for you. They're dictating your next steps. They're saying this is who and what you should become because this is the checklist of quote unquote the blueprint on how to adult life. There is really no such thing as that, but we were just in conversation talking about that. Like, what do we call this thing? And if we had to call it something, we'll just call it your how to adult life blueprint. I don't know. Just go with this example here. But she was just sharing with me that she was feeling so low on herself because she had not met the said milestones that is considered the next step in her progression of what a woman should be, what a woman should be doing, and how she should be living her life. And when she found herself measuring up, she really felt low on her self-worth. She felt low on her confidence. She felt low on her purpose. She felt low on her direction. And she felt low in just overall of like, what am I doing anymore? I don't even know what I'm here for. And as she was sharing that, it really brought up something in my own personal life because I was in that exact same spot several years ago at a season. It felt like I was at a crossroads where so many of my friends were getting married, they were having their first child, they were advancing in their careers, and they were, really set on track to live up to that next milestone, to get to that next stepping stone. And just sharing these parallels in the stories, it brought me back to my former self where I could relate to so much of what she was sharing. And in her share, actually a community share, because many of us chimed in and we were just sharing from that experience. So, of course, not to confuse the story, but I was just sharing at that point where this is a real thing. Like there's this unsaid and unmet pressure to produce, perform, and live up to an expectation that, whether it's by society, our peers, our own beliefs, our friends, our family, that this is where we should be. And when you're not there, there's something inherently wrong with you that you need to go back, you need to fix it, you need to do something, right? So all this now additional pressure, like not only am I not meeting expectations and standards, I'm also not meeting the own standard of my own performance and excellence, because if this is where I should be, then there's a great divide. And so when that gap, that's where one can, succumb to, beating themselves up, and hopes and dreams go to die. And then sometimes just to get out of that situation, we go back to what appeases people. And that's where we start picking up on track. Like, okay, let me get back on track. Let me do the things. Let me make that person happy. Let me, continue the succession towards that next milestone. Going back to what she was sharing, how it was so relatable, because partly as we're growing and going through life, we will continue to evolve. We will continue to outgrow. We will continue to level up. We will continue to shed former pieces of ourselves. And as we do, we're becoming someone completely new. When I was taking this into account, it made me look back at my former self and realize how I'm so, proud of myself for holding my ground and not swaying to what others thought or felt that my next step should have been. So for context here, when I graduated college, I did the thing. I went and I had multiple advancements in my former professional career. And when I advanced to the top level, there was nowhere else to go. So at that time, I had two options. Either I could stick it out or I could move on. And moving on would mean moving on to a whole nother occupation, saying goodbye to all the years and the relationships and all that stuff that came with that advancement of being with a company for nearly a decade. And it was very scary. And I remember talking to my husband, who was at the time my boyfriend, and shared with him and said, if I keep going down this path, I don't know if this is the life that we want to explore. Or, if we go down this other path as moving on with a new career, what if this opens the door for other opportunities? What if this opens the door for life that I didn't even know existed? And he and I had a heart to heart, and we both agreed that, what, let's figure this out. Let's find out. Let's take the road less traveled and we'll figure it out from where we are at that point. So we did. And we quickly realized that the road less traveled is actually the road that was best suited for me. And in that, we agreed that maybe those milestones are not for us, and we'll keep them as options and we'll revisit them should we need to later on. And as we navigated this life together, we realized how quickly that said life that was kind of like a cookie cutter example of what was this template of what we should and shouldn't do was something that was inherently suffocating to us. Like it felt like that wasn't a place where we needed to be in our life. And from that decision, my husband and I had to make that decision for ourselves. And that was something that was best suited. And in doing so, we ruffled feathers. We eventually some relationships parted ways. From a professional standpoint, we ventured into a whole new realm that people didn't understand. We made choices for our family that people also didn't understand, and they didn't get it. And that we got hit with a lot of questions. That was what we were met with resistance, questions, their own projected fears and worries on us, that because that wasn't the road that was paved for everybody, that to consider a road less traveled was unheard of. Couldn't possibly know what was out there because somebody else hadn't traveled it. And what I mean by that is, when we look at our network of our community and those that are closest around us, we have to ask ourselves if the direction of where we're going and headed in life, if the people that are closest to us at that point have never even imagined it, we can't take that advice and we can't take their constructive feedback with it being the end all be all, because if people haven't traveled that road that you want to travel on, and that's your inner circle right now, it's time to find those people that are willing to understand and embark on that road less traveled path with you, or at least understand and be curious to learn more about it, not even just from their own perspective, but so that they can have an open mind and knowing that one way is not the only way. Without sharing too much of that conversation I had earlier, I just wanted to share that some of these points that were made were very relevant in my life. So like I said, I could pull from these examples. And then the women that were also joining in on this conversation, how relatable that was. And as this woman was sharing, she's like, but I don't know if I want to be married. I don't know if I want to have kids. I don't know if I want to stay at this career. I don't know what I want in my future. And you know what? That is 1,000% better to say I don't know than to go with the flow to find out later that you didn't have a say in choosing your life. And that really put things in perspective. I say that from somebody who has gone through that experience and without an ounce of regret or remorse for the decisions that I made and my husband and I have made for what is best for our family. I look back and think that had I followed that blueprint just so, and where I would be, I don't believe that I would have had the same calling in life. I don't believe that I would have had the same mission in life. And I don't believe that I would still be at a place where I could confidently say that I chose this life and it is best for me. Because at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, whose life are we living? Ours or theirs? And if so, at what price, at what cost is it, leaving you with? Is it feeling regret, confusion, remorse, unclear, right? So we have to ask ourselves these questions because with those questions will come the clarity. And even if you have the clarity, and let's just say, for example, you choose not to go to college and you're getting harped on by friends and family, like everyone's doing it, right? Isn't that kind of the same as peer pressure? Like, I don't know, back in the day, we had the campaign, just say no to drugs. And when people would pressure you to do drugs, you have to just say no. But how often do we do this in our own life when somebody's pressuring you and saying, you have to go to college, you have to get this career, you have to get married, you have to have children, you have to. Well, all that pressure puts onto us and we fold and we crumble and pieces of our identity, they fade away, but they will always be there because you'll recognize when it's a disconnect later on when you long for that other chosen path, right? I don't want to say it comes with regret or remorse, but sometimes they do. But recognizing what is best for you, sticking to it, and giving that a try until you decide, that wasn't for me. Maybe that milestone was. Maybe that next step was. But I say this with ultimate love and compassion and hope and encouragement to just navigate life the best you can with what you know about you. And that is really the biggest point that I want to drive home today, is that nobody can determine or dictate your life without your consent. Nobody can determine or dictate your life without your consent. Ask yourself what it is that you truly want in life, in business, in relationships, in your future, what your financial level of security is, how you manage your time, who you hang out with, who you're in relationships with, how you're spending your time, energy, money. Everything is a transaction at this point, right? Because we have to look at, we are pulled in so many different directions that if we're not preserving pieces of that for ourselves, somebody else will take it and take advantage. And it can also be detrimental, leading you down paths that aren't congruent with your future. So I just wanted to share that. Again, I hope that this makes sense and is clear, because sometimes it can get a little bit muddy when you're in a community with a bunch of women all sharing that, and obviously for protection of their privacy. And, without being there, I just wanted to share some of the takeaways and pulled experiences that I could share back with you guys. So if this resonates with you, if you even find yourself in a season that you're just like, yeah, I'm there, I am being called or pushed into one direction or the other, I'd love to hear from you, because sometimes it's just talking it out or having that community and pillar of support of other people who have walked paths similar. And I know it's kind of hard. So sometimes it's like, if you're all with your mom friends and you're on the fence, like, do I want to be a mom? Probably not the best decision to go ask your mom friends, right? Because that's where they're at. Same as with somebody who is going to college, and your friends that are going to college are probably going to pump you up and tell you it's the best thing ever. But if that's not on your heart, then don't do that right now. Give yourself that space away from those that are making you feel that pressure. And sometimes we just need to take that step back to give ourselves that clarity. Sometimes we need to be in community with others who have walked that path to get the clarity. And sometimes we just need to really tap in, which is probably the best thing, tap into yourself and ask you, this soul that resides in this being, what is that you truly, truly long for? What is that vision, that craving, that calling, that quiet little whisper of a knowing that's deep down inside of you? What is she telling you? Listen and tune in, because that will be your guiding light and your compass for years to come. So you've got this, and we've got you. If this resonates with you, shoot me a DM. Hang out in our community, the Confident Woman community. Be a part of something and a community that is committed to leveling you up and growing with you. So if that's you, we invite you into the Confident Woman community. And if you're looking for more advancement, being around those like-minded women that are actively pursuing their passions, their purpose, and their mission, then I invite you to come in and check out the Confident Woman Collective. And all of that will be in our show notes. So please, we have so many resources and just ways to really empower you to live with, on, and for a purpose as you work towards becoming your best and most confident self. So take care. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the Confident Woman podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did, please be sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Thanks again for listening.